So thank you, each of you, for coming today. I really appreciate it. We all really appreciate it. And the Historical Society as an entity is nothing without you all. Now, I have an impromptu thing before I get going because I've been made aware that there's a special little thing going on, and I'm going to invite Dick Denton up so that he can share a little something with us.
So several years ago now, you folks were the proud owners of the oldest or second oldest tree in the town of Topsfield. And as you all know, it came down one day. Well, a couple of us saved some pieces of wood. You know, Dan Philpott saved a piece and made a bench for you out here. And I saved a couple of pieces. And I have a friend in northern Maine who is a turner. He turns wood and makes bowls. So I asked him if he would take a piece of your wood and make a bowl for me, actually, for you. And of course, in the passage of time, a lot of things happen unexpectedly. So you have to age the wood, and then people age. And so it's been too many years since I've come back with your bowl. But I have the bowl here. I'd like to have you have it and use it. Or I'm a member of a museum up in Maine, and I know that museums get things that they really can't use or don't want, and so they sell them. So you folks can use this, or you can sell it. It makes no difference. It's your bowl.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you so much. That is such a thoughtful and really just, kind of heart-tugging gift that we will really treasure a lot. It's just beautiful, just beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Dick. Now, I'm not going to take up a lot of time today, but we do have some stuff to talk about. The first thing I do want to acknowledge is just week before last, we lost 2 members of the Historical Society, very long-term members, and when I say long-term, probably 50 or 60 years. Jack Long, who was on our board, passed away. Jack was certainly the unofficial Topsfield historian. All those historical collections, he knew what was in all of those books. It was amazing, and he knew so much, and he paid to have a lot of things put onto, the CDs, and then when we went to the internet, he paid to have those put on. He was amazing, and we will really miss him. And the other passage I just want to note is Joyce Bergston. Joyce was, certainly well known all around town, and Joyce did a lot, certainly for us here. She used to hold the doll teas. She was, as many of you know, an educator, so she was great at having the doll teas, and she'd dress all up and have each child, introduce their doll and everything. So Joyce was wonderful. She did so many things, and we will miss her as well. So I just want to acknowledge those 2 passages. So, looking back, this is where we're going to start. The pandemic closure, as you all remember, I guess it was actually yesterday that the WHO declared that we were in a worldwide pandemic. And that was really tough, obviously, for us. One of the things that we're going to talk a little bit more about later is the fact that we rely a lot on income from events, and of course all events stopped. It was, as well, we didn't have the opportunity to come together in meetings like this, in our lectures and such. So it was a very tough time, of course, for everybody and for the society as well. But THS business continued. We continued online, where a number of us, we had board meetings on a regular basis. We continued our business. We met with vendors with masks on when we needed to. But we continued on because these buildings and this property don't recognize a pandemic. They still just keep aging, just the way, I guess the way all of us do, but they keep aging and they keep needing things. So we kept at, we had our board meetings and we kept doing what we needed to do. So your society board was very active and continued on while we almost probably seemed like we all had just gone out of sight. But we were back there doing what we needed to do. Barn rentals slowly resumed in 2021. Our barn rental manager, Martha Sanders, is here. She's done a fantastic job of navigating through the pandemic and keeping things going and reading the situation when we could or could not have events as the recommendations from the government changed back and forth, and we navigated through that. And then we had a gradual reopening beginning in kind of mid-2022. We had a Strawberry Festival last year. It was a very smaller festival. We recognized that, but we had to wait really until kind of fairly late in the game to even decide if we were going to have it at all. So we finally said, we just need to get back in the game. We need to make this happen. And Sean Whitworth-Howe, who is the Strawberry Festival chair, did a fantastic job at pulling together an event that is daunting under even normal circumstances. There was some feedback about the lack of strawberry shortcake. But again, putting people into close quarters, even if you remember back, it seems, we're getting better all the time, but last June, people still were not anxious to get into close quarters, so we were hesitant about being over there in the fellowship hall. We tried to keep everything outside. So we just, we pivoted as best as we could, as everybody else did. So apologies for those of you who just really missed that strawberry shortcake. We did what we could to kind of add something in. We started lectures again in the fall, right, Vince? It was kind of, we more or less started having them in the fall. We had a couple fits and starts where we had things scheduled and then canceled them and said, nope, we can't have it after all, as we went back and forth. So all the time, again, your board is we are constantly, even though you can't see us, we're constantly thinking, pivoting, planning, and such. Thanksgiving open house, we did that this past Thanksgiving. This was the first one in 2-3 years, and we had a very good turnout. We had, I would say, about 100 people show up, which is about on par. We get usually about 100 to 150 people in a 2-hour period on Thanksgiving morning, so that was good. And the other great thing about that was that there were a lot of families and a lot of young faces, people that I didn't know. A lot of times when we've had the Thanksgiving open house, it's been a lot of people, some people we don't know, but a lot of people we do know, and it turns into like a Thanksgiving morning kind of, people hang out, they chat, they know each other and everything, and that's great too. But yeah, this past time around, there were a lot of new people and a lot of young families, so that was great. Challenges. As you might imagine, one of the big challenges for us was loss of revenue. Basically, we rely heavily on the revenue from the Gould barn rentals in order to be able to sustain the sorts of things we do, the clapboards and the snow removal and all that sort of thing. And so we took a big hit. I'm not talking just a few $1,000s. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars that we took a hit to our bottom line from losing that rental. And so that has been definitely a big challenge that we are still going to be crawling out of for some time to come. And maintenance needs, well, like I said earlier, they don't stop just because of a pandemic. We just had to put in 2 new furnaces into this building because they dated from the mid-90s when the barn was built. So they are getting on towards 30 years old now, and they were failing. The heat exchanger was failing. The herb garden, we had a volunteer who was managing that for the last 15, 20 years, but she felt she couldn't really do it anymore, and so we had to find assistance in doing that. Megan Brown, who is here, she's been working on that, and that's been great. But all of these things, again, the herb garden, just what happens to your garden if you're not caring for it. It just goes to seed or goes crazy. So we need we need help there too. And then just general maintenance, and just like all of your houses, we have the same issue, only possibly even worse, in terms of needing new siding and such. I mean, old houses need a lot. I know, because I pretty much always lived in old houses, so I can tell you firsthand, they always need something. We also have a loss, I would describe it as a loss of momentum. When we don't have lectures, when we don't have events, not only the people in this room, but also the people out in the community who might come to something, we just sort of lost momentum. And that's not just us. I mean, I've talked to other organizations. Every organization has sort of lost momentum. Just the lack of connectivity. People are not coming together. And so even since we have reintroduced programs and begun to have them, we're certainly not seeing the turnout. We had fantastic programs and fantastic turnout before the pandemic. We were growing and growing and growing. And now it's slower. We're not seeing the turnout that we did beforehand. And I think I would describe that as a loss of momentum. Societal shifts. Some people are not necessarily coming out to things like they used to. Maybe because of a fear of something, but also sometimes because people just got used to not going to things. And people got used to also doing talk very much about, but we had decided that we would not do at that time. But I've got something later to ask opinions about future Zoom programs. And then the big thing, which you can see is in capital letters, volunteer shortage. I was talking to some folks earlier while we were having lunch. I started this being really involved. My mother was involved with the Historical Society years and years and years ago, and an older woman who was kind of my mother's contemporary, Ruth Brandis, she buttonholed me one day when I was about 40 and said, "Hey, we need people like you to get involved." And so I agreed, and I started writing the newsletter. And then improving the newsletter, and then I started to do the Thanksgiving open house with my family, and I can't even remember all the things that I have been involved in. But we're 20 years later, and I'm not 40 anymore. And so we really, we need people to volunteer, and we need to be out looking for volunteers. So that's that's a big thing for us. We also have a new challenge. As you, I think, all know, for the last 30-ish years, since we built the Gould Barn here, we had an arrangement with the Congregational Church that they allowed us to use those 12 spots that we have out there in their parking lot for parking for our events. And it's very nice, but it's actually also a requirement. We needed some handicap parking. We needed parking for event-related organizations, caterers and such, and also some parking for limited mobility. If somebody's, great-grandparents were coming to an event or something, or somebody who had some kind of limited mobility, they needed to have parking closer. So that policy is going to change, and therefore we are now in the position of having to think about how we are going to handle parking, because the need for ADA compliant parking, as well as the need for catering parking and some limited mobility parking and such, well, that hasn't gone away. It is a requirement not only for us, for us here today, wanting to come to Historical Society events. It's also a requirement for us to be able to effectively rent the barn and earn the money that we need to keep up these structures. And if we are not able to do that, then we will, obviously suffer a severe impact to our revenue. So we need to develop alternative parking, and Liz Mulholland and Bill Whiting have been working very hard. Liz has been leading the charge in figuring out how we can develop our own parking on our property. And as I said, handicapped and at least some additional spaces for our for the needs in order for us to be able to rent. And so, like I said, Liz and Bill, and there's been a whole cadre of people. We have met with a number of, pretty much all the departments within the town and such, starting to kind of field out what can we do, what are our possibilities. So we do not have a final plan yet, but we are moving in the direction of ideas on some number of spaces depending upon the cost and such, but generally. So I'm going to show you just a couple, and this won't be all of them. But so if we orient ourselves, the Gould Barn is over there. You can see Capen House is there. This would be Howlett and the stone wall area and the street and such. So there's a couple of alternatives, but there's more alternatives coming. But they all are some version of this, which is parking, at least ADA and at least a little bit of parking in that darker area, which is closer to Gould Barn. We are required to use a permeable, they're like grid kind of thing, laid down the grid that the gravel then goes into, because that's more stable for the ADA compliance part of it. So we are required to have at least a part of our parking be made up of this grid material. It would then connect into a walkway, which is also part of that long dark piece, and it will go and connect into the existing walkway. So alternative number 2 there is a smaller piece. Alternative 1 is a slightly larger piece that would also incorporate an entrance and an exit. I wanted to give you a general idea. I don't want to focus too much because we don't know exactly what it's going to be like, but this gives you an idea of what we're looking at doing and what we really, it does make sense. We are an organization with 2 buildings and such, and we basically have none of our own parking. We have those 2 little spots, but that's it. Yeah.
If you have that parking, could you make money on days when the Gould Barn doesn't have a function? You could rent spaces to the wedding group across the street?
It's possible. It certainly is a thought. But I think, we'll have to see how big it turns out to be too, whether there's even enough to be that. But basically what we're trying to do is have our own space so that we don't have to compete with everybody else for, all their spots. But it's something to consider. Okay, so moving on from parking. And then basically, how will this be funded? Obviously, our reserves have been depleted quite a bit because, we've had 2 years of, lost or very reduced revenues. So we have approached the town and are also approaching the state about something called the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, and to see if we can get some funding there. And we'll be looking for some funding other places. We are also going to be running a capital campaign, which we are still working out the details for, but certainly you'll be getting things in the mail, looking for donations for this. This is, I can't give you an exact number yet. It really depends upon what we choose to do, but it's tens of thousands of dollars. It's a substantial nut to crack. And the other thing is we need to have this done. We are shooting to have this done this summer. We have carved out a space in time where we don't have any rentals. And at the same time, the church has basically said, when they've given us a grace period, which was very kind, but have said, after the summer, you're done with the parking spots. So we will need to have our own parking at that point in time, starting in early September. So we plan to go ahead with something, whatever that something is, depending upon funds and what we're able to come up with. But something will be done by the end of the summer if we all have our way. So. And then, so that's why I said capital campaign. We're in this together. Other business. Our cottage tenant is leaving. She's taking a new job in Rhode Island, so she is moving. So we are, as some of you might know, we have an agreement with the cottage tenant in which they do certain duties, checking on the house and other things. And so we're just reviewing those duties to be as smart as possible in looking for our next tenant as to what we need for a tenant. We're also re-looking at the rental fee and such. So that's another thing. She's been here for 8.5 years. It's been a really a good run, but now it's an opportunity to look at what we're doing and see if we need to make any adjustments. The Building and Grounds Committee is always updating and assessing building and grounds and looking and prioritizing next projects. In addition to, obviously, the parking is a very critical one, because without the parking, it's the old, if you teach a man to fish, if we can fish by having those parking, then we can generate funds that will help us to fix other things. But the house and the barn, they don't wait for anybody. So the Gould Barn, the Parscape House, and the shoemaker's shop need some roof work and carpentry, and the back of the Parson Capen House has some issues with clapboards and such. So. And the other thing is that we'd like to start reevaluating the THS outreach programs, opportunities, and I actually have a survey that I'm going to hand out that I hope every single one of you will fill out today. But we want to know, there have been societal shifts. The world is different, and we want to make sure that we are positioned to go forward and not, just look back. So programs, opportunities to remain relevant for future generations. So what's next? So we are continuing on with programs led by our fearless programs leader, Vince Guerra, who we get together several times to plan out programs, find speakers and such. The Beatles program actually is a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity for us to partner with the library and the Topsfield Cultural Council. So we are looking for opportunities to be part of the community again and to reach out and to partner with other organizations. So the Beatles, which is March 23rd, it's actually going to be awesome. It's going to talk all about the cultural impact of the Beatles, but it's also going to include music, because two of the speakers are part of the Forever Fab Beatles tribute band. So there's going to be music, and it's a multimedia presentation. So that's going to be really great. Halifax explosion, breaking news. Dave Reed was here several years ago. He has a personal connection to the Halifax explosion, which you all probably know was in December, in which in 1917, and kicked off the Christmas tree we get every year in Boston. Dave has continued to do research since he was last with us, and has learned some to come and share. So he will be here. And then, just when you thought Paul Revere was, the son of liberty and a patriot and everything, court-martial. So we're going to find out more about what Paul did to get court-martialed. And that's Thursday, May 11th.
Thank you for talking about these programs. We're looking forward to them.
Yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
April and May.
Yeah. And then we've got more coming. Oh, and then the Strawberry Festival, which my understanding is Strawberry Shortcake will be back. The other thing, just so you know, last year, you have to order all of that months in advance. So we had to make a decision when we didn't even know if we were going to have a festival at all. We had to make a decision. It was like, well, we can't risk ordering that now and then ending up not having it, and then we have a lot of strawberries to do something with. So, but it is coming back June 10th. So we are busy. Finalize parking plan and create the fundraising plan. That's one of the first things that we will be working on. We're going to determine the new cottage requirements, cottage tenant requirements, and start interviewing for cottage tenants. If any of you have any ideas, we really want somebody who is interested in history and interested in being part of this, organization. The strongest candidate is going to be somebody who really cares about this, and it's not just a place to live. It's a lifestyle. Next steps in ongoing maintenance. As you can see, we've got some problems here. A woodpecker has apparently really taken hold here in the corner. And then you can also see, as I mentioned earlier, the clapboards on the back of the house are really, if your house looked like that, I think you'd be freaking out about now. I know I would. So we've also got some maintenance challenges like that. And we're also going to be planning programs. I know since I've been involved with the Historical Society, programs were always ran from April to March, basically. But we are changing that program calendar. It is now going to go from September through to June to the Strawberry Festival. So you know that nice little calendar you all used to receive that told you for the whole year what all the events were and everything. Well, now you're going to be receiving that in August, and it's going to be telling you all of the programs that are happening between September and June. And obviously we haven't put that out for the last 3 years because I think we put one out and then immediately we had a shutdown, and that's the last time that we put one out, so it was 3 years ago. So we need you and your friends. Please help. Just a few hours a month. We need somebody to do publicity, which I used to do, but I can only do so many things, I found. Strawberry Festival. Strawberry Festival, we are in serious need of some volunteers of Strawberry Festival. And again, it's like, a very, a few hours a month. That's the thing. Is if everybody can help a few hours a month, then we are way further ahead. And one of the things that I found, and that I found when I was managing the docents for the Parson Capen House, if I had a team, if I had a cadre of people, then I could rely on each one for only like a few hours, and so if you can just be part of a team, it doesn't mean you have to make a permanent commitment. It doesn't mean that you have to show up at a particular time all the time. It's more just like, hey, there are 10 of you, can 3 of you do such and such? And that works like magic. And so I'm really hoping that I have a survey that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that you all will indicate that yes, you can call me for this or this. We need administrative help. Poor Jean Pickering here. She goes and gets the mail, she sends letters out, thanking people for donations. She's got so much stuff going on. I know myself, and I don't mind this at all, but that newsletter that you receive, I sit in my family room and stick things onto it. And it takes me about 3 or 4 hours to do. So, there's just a lot of administration behind what you see. Helping on the committee to find, we actually need, right now, we need another person to join our programs committee, which we do it for, we have maybe 3-4 meetings right before we publish the calendar. We look for speakers, we look for ideas, we contact speakers, we line up dates and such, and then you're done. You're done for the year until the next program year. So that is a great way, and I know Vince would be so grateful if somebody would go up to Vince afterwards and say, Vince, I want to be on your program committee. And a lot of the meetings actually we're now doing by Zoom. So you don't even have to get in the car and drive anywhere.
Our next program meeting is scheduled for this coming Wednesday on Zoom, which you are going to host and launch, right? So it's
yes, I'm the Zoom lady.
So we're certainly looking forward to a new person. As a matter of fact, our most recent new member is Jean Pickering, our vice president, and she's
right over there.
She is a very welcome addition to the committee.
And then event assistance, again, it's kind of a one-off, but Strawberry Festival, we need hullers. We need strawberry hullers. And I know before the pandemic came along, we were starting to really have a difficult time just getting enough people to hull all those strawberries, which happens on Friday night. So, another thing. So when you get the call or when you see the opportunity, don't look the other way. Say, seize the moment and go, I'm going to help. And hospitality. Yeah, Chris in the back, and now Marianne Marianne just this time around said, hey, I will bake every single time. I heard her say that. But Chris could use some help, and maybe once every few months you could provide something so that Chris doesn't have to do all the baking by herself. So now it comes to voting time. So the way that it works is we need to have all members vote on the board slate for this year, and this is the board slate. For those of you who, let me see. So Jean Pickering, who is now in the midst of trying to hand things out. Harry Rifle, who's right next to her in the gray. Liz Mulholland, who is in the lovely blue sweater. Bill Whiting in the back, I always think of a trout when I see that shirt. It's trout colored. Vince Guerra, right there at that table. Norm Eisler, our president emeritus, who still remains on our board. And I think those were, and Al Russo back there. And the rest were not able to join us. So can I have a motion from the floor to accept this board slate?
So moved.
All right, second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, well, thank you for the vote of confidence. We appreciate it. Oh, and one other thing I want to mention that Norm asked me to mention is the Kimball Scholarship. If you know of young people who have an interest in history and have a tie to Topsfield and would like to be considered for a scholarship, I just want to encourage you all to, children, grandchildren, neighbors, whomever, to apply. The application is actually on the THS website. And the deadline is April 15th. And I just want to mention, I know we've covered this before, but I do want to mention with the THS, with the Kimball Scholarship, some people have, the Historical Society has so much money, they have that Kimball Scholarship. But I just want everyone to know that the Kimball Scholarship, the Kimball family specifically says, and made a requirement, it can only be used for scholarships. So it is not something that we, THS, can tap into for any other purpose. And our hands are tied in that. There is no discussion. That is the way that it is. So I just want to be clear about that, because I think, sometimes we haven't said that for a while, and I think it bears repeating. So yes, we do have the money, but no, we can't do anything. We can't put a parking lot into it. So, okay, so now I'm gonna ask Norm, as I think all of you know, was our fearless leader for 33 years, from 1989 to last year, 2022. In that time, Norm caused to have the cottage, the caretaker's cottage built. He was instrumental in having this barn in which we are all now sitting and enjoying a lovely lunch built. As well as continuing on with maintenance of the organization. He did so much for the town itself as well, with all the historic markers, with the work with the Church of Latter-day Saints and all the markers with them and the events that we've had with them over the years. I could stand here all day and say how much Norm has done for this society single-handedly. He will go down in the annals of history as being like the most amazing and most active president ever. So with that, I just want to show that we have, as part of the appreciation, we have created this bench.
First I thought it was a cloth.
And here it says, recognizing Norman J. Eisler, THS President, 1989 to 2022, for his dedication to the society. And this bench will be placed out by the Priscilla Cape and Herb Garden out there for all to see and for all to appreciate just how much Norm has done for the society. So let's have a applause for Norm.
don't really feel like saying very much,
Okay.
except thank you very much. It's been a long time to be involved in the Historical Society, and met a lot of nice people, enjoyed the 33 years of being involved, and look forward to a couple more years. So, thank you again. Thank you for showing up today.
And with that, that is the conclusion of the annual meeting. Are there any questions or any other thoughts? I do hope that you'll take the time to give serious consideration to the survey, that you can, and also you have the opportunity to get ahead of the curve and fill in your membership application and hand in your check, and then you know your check, it's done, you don't have to wait. But other than that, yeah, yep.
How many total members are there?
We have, Jean, do you?
We have about 220 up-to-date members.
220 up-to-date members.
We have about 400 people who receive our email list every month.
400 people that receive the email distribution, because the email distribution goes to people who indicate an interest even if they're not members, because we want to, you know, maybe they're future members.
Out of state, our
Yep.
email list.
Yeah, so. All right. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. And have a lovely afternoon.